What if I told you that the most iconic Barney song ever, the one that ends every episode, the one that's basically wired into your brain, was legally ripped away at the peak of Barney's popularity? Not because it wasn't successful, not because the show wanted to move on, but because of a full-blown custody battle between the person who wrote it, the publisher who owned it on paper, and the company that turned it into a cultural weapon. This is how I Love You, You Love Me got pulled from Barney, and how they nearly lost it for good. Welcome to the Barney Desk. So, we need to get into a little bit of context to explain what happened here. In the early 1990s, children's entertainment got completely flipped on its head by a purple and green Tyrannosaurus Rex named Barney. The character, created by Cheryl Leach, became the center of a merchandising and broadcast empire that generated hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And sitting right there at the heart of that machine was the closing theme, I Love You, which is sung to the tune of This Old Man. I'd sing it for you, but you already know the words.
I love me too.
Anyway, if you didn't know, Barney didn't start as a TV show. He actually started as a small home video series before the TV show got greenlit. And back then, the words were a little bit different to the song. The line, "We're a happy family," used to be, "We're as happy as can be." I'm glad they changed it. That sounds kind of dumb. By the peak of Barneymania in 1993, Barney and Friends was the most popular children's program in the US. And Barney's parent group, the Lions Group, was generating an estimated $50 million in licensing revenue alone. Look, I need you to understand how big Barney was. He was the Michael Jackson of kids television, and I Love You was his Thriller. It was the sonic branding of the entire enterprise, appearing in every episode, on plush toys that sang when squeezed, and in every single live stage show. Which is why I need to tell you something. I wasn't entirely honest with you. I Love You wasn't invented by Barney. Yeah, let out your collective gasps and sobs. Let's move on.
I think I hear a baby crying.
In late 1981, a former school teacher named Jean Warren ran a small publishing company in Everett, Washington. Anyway, she puts out this newsletter called Totline. That's funny.
Not really.
It sounds like a number you want to call when a potato is ready to end it all. Anyway, she wanted to compile a book of what are called piggyback songs, which are when you write new lyrics to classic public domain melodies. You're piggybacking off that tune.
Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony.
So she runs an ad asking people to submit original lyrics to nursery rhyme songs. But here's the kicker. The payment wasn't money, but rather it was a credit and a free copy of the book. Which is already insane, because you're telling me if I submit a banger to a compilation album, you're paying me in a complimentary CD? Man, I should never get into streaming. Enter Lee Bernstein, an Indiana homemaker and a major player in this story. Now, Lee spent most of her days at home while her husband was at work, which meant she had a lot of time on her hands. She also fancied herself a bit of a songwriter and had seen the advertisement, so she figured, why not? So in 1982, she sat down and wrote a simple 4-line verse set to the tune of This Old Man. And here's how the lyrics went. I love you, you love me, we're as happy as can be. Here's a great big kiss and a hug from me to you. Won't you say you love me too? That's a little different than how most of us know it, but Lee seemed to like it, so she sends it in. And on January 2nd, 1983, she signs a short agreement that includes one little tiny line. Your lyrics will become the property of Warren Publishing, which is legalese for "this is no longer yours." But to Lee, this is fine. It's a song in some niche resource book. She sees no problem with it, so she signs it. Anyone in business will tell you that's probably not a good idea, but Lee certainly didn't know that. Neither her nor Jean thinks this song will ever be worth more than the $5 paperback it's getting printed in. So the book gets released in 1983, and just like that, the rights are gone. Fast forward to the late 80s. Down in Texas, the Lions Group is trying to get what will become the early Barney videos off the ground. Kathy Parker, one of the co-creators, is at a toddler playgroup with her kid when she hears this super sweet little 4-line song. She'd never heard it before, but she just assumed it was some sort of random public domain nursery rhyme she missed growing up. So she brings it back to Cheryl Leach, and Cheryl loves it. And just like that, it becomes the emotional anchor of the entire Barney formula. Fun fact, it wasn't even originally the closing theme. In the earliest videos, it's used near the beginning to summon Barney. Anyway, in 1991, when Barney was in the process of getting greenlit into a TV show, Lee was just kind of living her life. She had a daughter now, and she had completely forgotten about the little submission she'd sent almost a decade earlier. It was January and she was recovering from foot surgery when she suddenly heard her daughter yelling from the living room. Her daughter was watching TV when she suddenly exclaimed, "Mom, that's your song!" Lee didn't know what she was talking about, so she made her way to the living room, but the clip had already ended. She couldn't even figure out what show it was. It wasn't until June of 1992 that they finally solved the mystery. Lee and her daughter are at JCPenney, and they see a display of Barney merch and home videos. Her daughter points at the purple dinosaur and goes, "Yeah, that's the guy." So Lee bought a tape and took it home, and that tape was Rock with Barney. That's so funny to me because it's the only video that doesn't include "I Love You." It's only used briefly as an instrumental underscore, which Lee did hear, but she wasn't totally convinced. Maybe she thought her daughter just recognized the melody. But alas, 2 weeks later, she's at the dry cleaners, and one of her friend's granddaughters says she wants to go home and watch Barney. Lee recognizes the name and is like, "Oh, do you know the song I Love You?" And the kid did indeed know ball. So the next day, Lee had her kids record an episode of Barney and Friends, and there it was. The full song broadcast nationally with absolutely zero credit to her. The lyrics having been changed, now saying, "I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. With a great big hug and a kiss from me to you, won't you say you love me too?" There's also a second verse, but that's not as interesting to the point I'm trying to make here. Anyway, Lee was pissed. You know why?
I don't know.
Because she spent $5 on Rock with Barney and she wanted her money back. I'm kidding, that's not why she was upset. So she contacted a lawyer, and in July of 1992, a cease and desist was sent out. And to Lion's credit, they reacted like a company that just realized they stepped on a landmine. They're not trying to start beef while their dinosaur is taken off. So in September, they cut a deal with Lee. Lions paid her $5,000 for past use, $2,500 for future use, and $2,500 every 2 years after that, adjusted for inflation, and they agreed to credit her going forward. Great, pack it up, gang, day is saved. Let's make another season of Barney, woohoo! And that would have been the end of the story. Lions started crediting her and putting her name on all the albums and videos and stuff, and they now own the song because Bernstein transferred the rights to them. Except, Lee didn't actually own the rights she was selling, because she already signed them away in 1983. And here's where the plot twist comes in. Gene Warren, under Warren Publishing, eventually becomes aware of Barney's existence, and let's just say they did not send a polite email. Probably because emails didn't exist yet. Anyway, from here on out, everything escalates fast, so lock in, guys. On February 12th, 1993, Gene's legal team sends letters to both Lee and Lions, basically saying, "You know that 1992 deal you guys made? Yeah, that's gum on the bottom of my shoe. Lee gave us the rights to the song back in 1983. Look, Lions just started breathing again, and now suddenly they're staring at this letter like,
Ay.
Within a week, Lions rushes to register their transfer from Lee with the Copyright Office, as if filing paperwork in 1993 is gonna magically undo a contract from 10 years earlier. What were they thinking? Anyway, in May 1993, Gene amends her own registration to specifically single out the "I Love You" lyrics as her property, and not just part of a bigger book compilation. Stuff is going crazy, man, but everyone's suddenly feeling a little quirky and silly, so lawsuits start flying left and right. In April 1993, Lions files a declaratory judgment against Lee, basically trying to lock in their contract with her was valid before Gene can make the first big move. It's a preemptive strike, but Gene didn't take too kindly to this and responded by going nuclear. She sues Lions, she sues Lee, she sues Time Life, who is distributing season 1 on video, she sues EMI Records over soundtrack releases, she even sues JCPenney for just selling Barney toys and merchandise. Bro's going crazy, no one is safe! That is an insane move, because by that logic, you're not just threatening Barney, you're threatening the entire supply chain that makes Barney money. If she proved she owned the copyright, she could block Lions from using the song, force a recall of millions of plush dolls, and demand some of the profits that could run into the tens of millions. Look, I want to be upset about this, but I respect the grind. Well done, guys. Well played. To say Lions was a little frightened would be the understatement of the year. The filing of the lawsuit had an immediate chilling effect on the franchise. Even though there was no court injunction explicitly banning the song, Lions pulled any and all usage of it to try and mitigate potential damages. Because think, if they lost the suit, every new usage of I Love You would be even more they'd have to shill out. This led to the blackout period, where the song disappeared from all Barney releases. And people noticed, because I Love You is the ritualistic ending to every engagement with Barney. It wasn't present on Barney Favorites Volume 2, which is already weird, but more painfully, it was also not included in Barney Live in New York City or the NBC special Imagination Island. And dude, that hurts. Barney makes his big New York stage debut and he can't even sing his signature song. Instead, he closes with Everyone Is Special, which is fine, it's a respectable substitute, but it's not I Love You. Imagination Island doesn't even get that, so in the trash it goes. And as if that wasn't messy enough, the press absolutely latched onto it. The lawsuit was being covered in the news, adults were confused why this was even happening, and the optics were brutal. The dinosaur who teaches sharing is suddenly being accused of stealing. With the trial scheduled for the end of 1994, the heat had become too much. Lions couldn't really function without their signature closer, and Gene had that signed 1983 assignment that's pretty hard to argue with. They'd already delayed production on a third season, hoping they could use the song again, but it'd been already a year and a half since then. At some point, you run out of runway. Lions knew the fight was over. In June 1994, both sides announced they reached a verbal agreement, which was finalized soon after. The exact number was never publicly disclosed, but the structure reportedly involved Lions effectively buying out Warren Publishing's rights to the song. Jean Warren said she was very pleased with the settlement, which, yeah, I'm sure she was. Considering how lucrative the franchise was, the payout likely climbed well into the high 6 or even 7 figures. Not bad for a $5 acquisition back in '83. Most importantly, Barney got the song back. It officially returned in the PBS special Barney Celebrates Children, which aired in December 1994, and then again in the season 3 premiere in February 1995. From there, it went right back to being the series' emotional anchor, used in nearly every episode, home video, tour, toy, and tie-in, all the way through the series' end in 2010, cementing its place as one of the most iconic children's songs of all time. And that's the end of the story for Barney and Warren. But Lee, yeah, she wasn't too thrilled with the outcome of the lawsuit. So in 1994, she turned around and sued her own lawyer for malpractice, arguing he should have uncovered the 1983 assignment before negotiating that 1992 deal with the Lions Group. The case dragged on for years, and in 2000, we finally got a court opinion that laid everything out in brutal clarity. The court ruled that the 1983 agreement was a valid transfer. The wording, the lyrics will become the property of Warren Publishing, seems pretty clear. They rejected Lee's attempts to reinterpret it later with one of the coldest lines you'll ever read in a children's song court case.
Bernstein's argument that we should inspect the terms of the agreement through the distorted lens of hindsight is unsupported by either logic or persuasive legal authority.
Which is legalese for, you can't pretend you didn't sign the thing. They even suggested she was lucky to get that earlier payout from Lions at all, considering she sold something she didn't actually own. So yeah, kind of a bummer for her. In the end, everyone else seemed to walk away with something except Lee, who ironically ended up with exactly what she was originally promised. Just a credit. The same credit she was told she'd receive when she first submitted the song to Gene's book all those years ago. Still, flowers where they're due. She wrote one of the most iconic children's songs in history. Know your worth, Queen. And that is the story about how the song about being a happy family ended up being a 7-year divorce between the person who wrote it, the person who owned it on paper, and the dino that made it priceless. If you enjoyed this deep dive, you should consider subscribing. I do a lot of deep dives on the forgotten history of the Barney franchise and brand. So if you find this interesting, you should click the button below this video. Speaking of which, you can also join the Deskies, our little community here, which gets you behind the scenes videos, extra videos, early access, voting in polls, custom badges and emojis, and and access to our Discord server. It's a great way to support the channel if you like what I do here. Huge shout out to my friend Polygon. He edited half of this video. He's fantastic. He makes such good stuff. So go check out his work on Instagram. The handle is on the screen. As always, I've been the Barney Desk, and thanks for watching.